Welcome back to Parents Who Think. Danusha here. And today, I'm bringing you my conversation with Simon Squibb, Sunday Times bestselling author of his book, What's Your Dream? He's founder of HelpBnk.com, which is all about helping people help people. Not your typical entrepreneur, Simon started his first business while homeless at just 15 and later sold his agency, Fluid, to PwC for more money than he'll ever need. In our conversation, Simon shares his thoughts on cultivating luck, overcoming adversity, and crafting a life filled with purpose and passion. Buckle up for this one. It's been a while since we heard from a father on this show. Welcome, Simon. Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
15, no money, a fiver in your pocket, and very little education. How did you turn to entrepreneurship rather than crime, for instance?
It's a good question. For some reason, I never really fell into the crime path, but I did almost fall into the social services path. And I remember when this happened to me, at that time, a 15-year-old suddenly having nowhere to sleep is an embarrassing potential rough sleeper on the streets of any town, right? So I did actually get social services come up to me and say, you can have, I think it was about £220 a week from us. And, you just sign these forms. But you can't work. You can't do anything. You just literally just sit kind of like a squat kind of thing and not do anything. And there was something in me at that moment that made me say, it's okay. I don't need that money and I can do this myself. But I know a lot of people that get trapped by that exact offer. And that actually sounds like the dream, right? Okay, great. I'm being paid to sit at home. I don't have to go to school. I don't have to, I can't work. But I didn't. And I think that what happened to me was two things. One, that something woke up in my head, an entrepreneurial muscle that I guess was always probably there. It woke up. And my mind, there's a big house right in front of me. And I thought, why is someone who's got a lovely house got a messy garden? Maybe they don't have time to take care of the garden. So I just at 15 years old, went up to this big house, knocked on the door. This guy answered the door and I say, hi, my name's Simon Squibb. I've got a gardening company and I'd like to take care of your garden. And the guy said to me, oh, that's amazing. I've actually been thinking I need to get some help to do my garden. How much would you charge to take care of it? So I just looked around and said, £250 a month? And he said, sure, that'll be great. I said, okay, I'll start next weekend. And I walked away. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, that's incredible. I think I've just made £250. I knocked at about 100 doors that day. And the next door I knocked on, for example, the person, when they opened the door, and I said, hi, I'm Simon Squibb. I'd like to take care of your garden. The guy said, so I've got someone else already doing it. Don't need you. I said, well, what's strange is your garden is still quite messy. And I was looking at the front of the bushes and there's lots of rubbish there and it's not being cleared away. And the guy said, yeah, that's actually true. The gardener's got a bit lazy. He's got no competition. So I could give you a go. And I said, oh, okay. So basically I learned to push back on the rejection naturally and accidentally, just through desperation of wanting to eat probably. Basically, by the end of the day, I managed to get about 11 people to say yes to me being their gardener.
That's a teachable moment right there. As Simon was talking, I thought to myself, I really need my tweens to hear this. That's the thing about Simon. He has this special inspo knack. Anyway, let's get back to what happened next.
And so I planned to do 3 gardens in one day, for example, to kind of be able to do it in a week. And I couldn't even get one garden finished. It was just so tiring. So then I decided I've got to hire people to help me do this. And I had a business up and running. And after that, the rest is history, as they say. I've just got the bug being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, it's a marvelous story. It sounds like you knew very little about gardening.
Very little about gardening, very little about business, very little about sales, very little about hiring people, very little about partnership agreements. I made every mistake there is.
So where did you get the balls to knock on 100 doors?
Frankly, desperation. I actually now preach this as a pretty interesting driver. I think that the Vikings call it burning the boats. They get to England, they burn the boats. There's no going back to your comfortable life, culture, We're here to conquer. I now apply it to whatever I'm doing by being all in. I actually now thank my mother for kicking me out at that time. It was, of course, not a nice experience, but I have a life today I really love, I really cherish and I really appreciate. And I think I wouldn't have had the life I've got now if I hadn't had this kind of back against the wall, wake up and go for it, survive moment.
This idea of burning the boats is brilliant because, of course, you are backed against the wall, aren't you? You have to. So you have to go all in. And that, as you say, activates wake up within us that we find ways. And I absolutely adore your garden story. I mean, it is so brilliant and so inspirational. I can imagine a lot of young people that you talk to must really, really love that, and other older people. I'm wondering how you went from that gardening business that you had to being in Hong Kong with, even PwC able to buy this business fluid from you.
It's a long story. The gist of it is you have to fail many, many times before you succeed. Failure comes in many forms, but I did not have a smash hit after smash hit of business. I had a lot of incredibly big highs and lows, and I made a lot of mistakes and I adjusted. And I think sometimes my issue with the education system, for example, is about your grades, right? Get an A and you will do well. That's statistically in the real world not true. A students, we all know, end up working for C students, and C students are often in a building owned by D students. That's a statistical fact that on average, that's true, what I just said. It's not about your grades. In fact, those that learn to accept C's and D's and failure, they end up being quite resilient. They end up learning to not fail. But those that have A's and they come into the real world and are suddenly not A students find it very hard because they spent the first 26 years of their life getting A's. And so they want to go work in an environment where people keep giving them A's. So they go work for someone else.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's a charmed life, isn't it? When you if you haven't really fallen on your face. What's been your biggest fail? Like the most memorable one for you?
I reflect on it a lot myself. And the interesting thing is I've enjoyed a lot of my failures. The happiness in my life comes from the journey of building that company for 15 years with incredible people, doing incredibly fun things. And along the way, I learned these two things. One is purpose. Why am I doing this? At first, it was to eat. And as I, learned the skill, the craft, I got that 10,000 hours thing, I guess, where you start just becoming an expert. And I didn't plan on putting 10,000 hours in to being an entrepreneur and becoming an expert. I think I probably put 100,000 hours in at this point. But the point is, I think if you do that and you apply yourself, you get good at something. And once you're good at something, all sorts of opportunities come your way. I do feel very grateful. I've actually worked on, let's call it the bitterness of it all. I've worked on that. And I think everyone should, seek out help for things that have not gone right in life. But I've worked on that side of my emotions, but I am definitely on the side of grateful of where I am right now.
Yeah, I can hear. And what's your relationship with your mum like?
I find it hard to talk about it because I still have, let's call it, frustrations with my mother. I was actually very close with my mother growing up. When I was 15, my father suddenly died of a heart attack in front of me, actually. He was 56, I was 15. And in that moment, something also changed in my mother's life, but in my psyche. And my family home suddenly became a very sad place. And I actually, as a 15-year-old, I wanted to be away from the sadness. And I think my mother rejected me at that moment because of that, in part. I think she wanted me to be there with her miserable. And I wanted to be a 15-year-old, not being sad, right? My mother is quite narcissistic. She wanted me to be sad. And I was sad, but I didn't want to wallow in it. She kicked me out and she thought I would either die in the street or come back, begging for her forgiveness and allowing her to control me. Some inner strength came out in me and I decided to stand up on my own 2 feet. I remember asking her for my national insurance card because it was meant to come through because I was just about to turn 16 and she refused to give it to me, which meant I couldn't get a job. So she designed things around things like that to break me. But it didn't break me. It made me. And so I actually thank her for doing what she did.
Simon's gratitude to his mum for what she did way back then is admirable. And he reminds me of the fact that apparently Einstein got up every day and said, thank you 100 times. It changes our frequency in life. And that change of focus to gratitude rather than, let's say, bitterness makes a big difference. I wanted to hear what Simon has to say about luck because I know he has strong opinions on it.
And my theory on luck. So the structure of luck is pretty interesting. And as I said earlier, people always talk about how if you work hard, you'll get lucky, or, they have this kind of one-liners that, luck favors the prepared, right?
Oh God, yes.
Yeah. And frankly, it's not intellectual enough. The actual answer around how to get more luck in life or how to be lucky is quite complex. And this is my quick take on it. There are, in fact, 2 parts to luck. right? Right now in the dictionary, the luck is described as a random occurrence. And actually, the random occurrence part of life, if you looked at it, there's actually two types of luck. And I've done the research on this. 2% of your life is 98% of your luck is actually within your control. So 2% example would be where you're born. There's nothing you can do. Doesn't matter how hard you work, you are going to get born where you are going to get born. It's 2% is COVID. But COVID kind of unites us in a strange way. We've all had this experience. And I have a prediction that 50 years from now, we'll talk about it in some sort of fond way. And like
the war or something.
Something like that. Yeah, we had that experience together. We had time at home, and we learned to appreciate going to work, right? That's been a kind of gift. But the point is, it is random. Despite conspiracy theories, it's random. And that's 2% of your life, only 2% though. The other 98% is you can influence it. And you can influence it by these three elements I've discovered by analyzing my own life and other people's since. And that is, the number one thing is you've got to take risk. The more risks you take, the luckier you get, is more close to the truth. And without risk, you definitely won't get lucky. And risk is linked to fear. Fear is something a bit misunderstood by society today. A lot of people that feel fear almost want to, as quickly as they can, stop feeling fear. It's actually a superpower that makes you stronger, faster, better. And so fear and risk are linked. If you can learn to enjoy fear, you can learn to enjoy risk. And if you take more risk, you will be more lucky. The second of the three things is they've got to learn persistence. I remember sitting down with my business partner and we wrote down 50 companies that would be like dream clients for us to work with in this company. I would contact those companies where it was to wish them a Merry Christmas and send them a Christmas card or Happy Chinese New Year. Every single month, I'd find a way of connecting until 9 years later, all 50 were our clients. And so persistence is the second most important element of increasing your chances of luck. And then the final element is destination. Destination is crucial to increase your chances of luck, knowing it. If you don't know your destination, you literally go around in circles. There's just so many things that you can do to make sure, you get there. But if you don't know your destination, and a lot of people don't, I would say 8 out of 10 people don't know their destination, then you don't increase your chance of luck. You literally have no target, right? So risk, persistence, and destination, crucial.
So that 2% is out of your hands, yeah? And what's the role of privilege in that 2%? I mean, I'm talking color of your skin, your class.
I think is a very big part. I think I'm actually quite privileged. I'm a white male and I grew up in a middle-class family. I say I had no education. I did have an education. I learned to read and write. I'm actually dyslexic, but I went to school up to the age of 15. Let's face it, half the population probably didn't have that start. That's why I say there's 2%. I would say though, you can be born into the royal family. A lot of people are like, wow, you're never going to worry about money. You look at Harry. Is he happy? Not necessarily. And equally on the other side, there's plenty of famous people that were born into absolute poverty that turned it all around and actually used that difficult place they grew up as the reason they were able to fight back, and it gave them the backbone. The very thing that was hard for them made them strong. But it's all to do with how you frame it, isn't it? One of my favorite stories is about there's two boys, twins that are born into a family where the father is a drunk. And then they go off and one becomes incredibly successful and the other one becomes a drunk. And then the news channel does a story on the very famous one and decides to also interview his brother to get context around the family. And in the interview, the one that hasn't done very well was asked, why have you ended up like this? Why are you living in this different, why are you a drunk? Why is it like this? And he said, well, I'm like this because my father was a drunk. And then they interviewed the person who was very successful and said, why are you like this? How have you managed to, be so successful? And he said, because my father was a drunk.
Yeah. It's brilliant, isn't it? Love that. Love that. It's what you do with things. I like to say it's the cards you're played. Play the cards that you're given. I love hearing you talk about luck and inspiring us. It's absolutely wonderful. Love this conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Simon's story truly reminds us that while fate may play a small role, our destiny is largely shaped by our willingness to embrace risk, persevere through challenges, and pursue our goals with unwavering focus. I hope our words ignite a fire within you to chase your dreams and create your own success story. Until next time, keep striving for greatness. Take care.